Matt Corby, welcome back to Triple J. How are you?
Oh, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Very well. We meet again. You know what? I actually thought it might have been a little bit longer because we first touched base back in 2016 when Telluric... I'll never get the title of that record
that was good.
Telluric.
Yeah.
When Telluric came out, we had a good conversation about the making of that record. And after we had a chat, I thought, God, it's going to be another 5 years until we get a second record from Matt Corby. But you surprised me.
Yeah, no, we worked quick this time. I think we got the formula down and how to work swiftly. So,
well, that first record was, there was a lot of learning. There was a big process behind the making of it. It was all the groundwork, all the hard work done then.
Yeah. No, exactly. I think, there was a whole record that was made that got canned before that. So I think there was an extra bout of anxiety and nervousness placed on Telluric that potentially drew the process out a little bit longer than it should have been.
Well, you had all the pressure of the first album, and then you wanted to do it all yourself, and then you scrapped those recordings, as you said. You learned the instruments, you played it all yourself. Then it came out, got a good reaction.
Yeah.
Was that a relief? Did you feel like, right, now I can move forward?
I did actually. I felt it was good just to get it out of the way and I could have spent another 10 years on it if I was going to be really psycho about it. So it was good that we got it to a point and got it out, and I could see it for what it is now in hindsight. I still like a lot of songs on that record.
I hope so.
Yeah, no, there's definitely some on there that I've listened back to, which I don't normally listen back to things that I've released because it's in the past and I'll freak out and want to change it and I can't. But there's a couple that I was like, oh, what kind of place was I in to write a song like that? And it's kind of cool that I could
You felt
be
almost
so detached.
Yeah, you felt separated almost from the material. That must be freaky.
It was freaky. It's nice to appreciate it in a way that I wasn't going like, oh, I'm good. It was more like, oh, that's a nice song. Like,
yeah,
that's cool.
I'd imagine you're going to have a lot of that with this record as well because it's such a dreamlike record.
Yeah, it is. It's very joyous.
It's very joyous. And it's also kind of like there's kind of like this haze of creativity that exists over it. It's a very accomplished record. It's a very different sounding record too to a lot that is around in this day and age. So, okay, you finished touring the first album. Then you're going to become a father.
Yeah.
You've already talked about this on Triple J, so I'll just paraphrase. You knew you were going to become a father and you went, I better pull my finger out and start to
pretty much
get this second record done. Did you have an idea of what sort of a record you wanted to make at that point?
No, not really. I'd been experimenting with music at home in the studio. And then when me and Dan just sort of started writing together, songs just came out really quick. We were in the studio for like 2-week periods at a time, and we'd be doing 2 songs a day. And I think all the experimental work that I'd done at home and finding new chord progressions and little bit like rhythms and beats and stuff, I could sort of draw on that when I was working with Dan and be like, oh, I kind of know how to solve this musical problem right now with something that I'd done in some other jam, and I could sort of start cutting and pasting old ideas together.
And you were pretty much building the songs from the ground up in those sessions.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and some of the music that you hear on the record was all the instruments that were played. That was the demo. That was the first day. We were just in a really good studio, so it ended up becoming the actual recordings.
Well, let's go into a few of these facts. The Dan that you're talking about is Dan Hume.
Dan Hume, yeah.
He's a great producer. He's worked with you before, worked on the first album, and he's worked with people like Lisa Mitchell, and he's done a lot of the recent Amy Shark stuff. Yep. So he's on a roll. So you and him in the studio basically co-writing a lot of this material? Pretty
much, yeah. I mean, he sat at the helm at the desk and I was just jumping around from instrument to instrument, and he would just tell me when to stop, basically. That's sort of what I need. He calls me Captain Fiddlefingers because I can't help myself when I'm on an instrument. I just do too much and it ends up sounding ridiculous. So
you have to cut back a bit?
I do. Normally the very first thing that I do is good, and then it just gets worse and worse and worse from that point on.
Because you overplay it?
Yeah, I think I overthink everything and just be like, oh no, maybe let's change key 4 times and then come back. And it's just like, no, we're not doing that. Like, okay, fair enough.
So a couple of week sessions in the studio, and is this a studio in Byron Bay?
It's in Mullum Bimby, which is called the Music Farm. It's amazing. It's got amazing gear in it, and it's a sick room. It's really dry, and it's incredibly well built, and it's very secluded, so you feel quite free and not like you're bothering people. I mean, at my house, I've got neighbours semi-close by. I feel a bit weird if I'm banging the drums late at night or something. So.
Well, you live in northern New South Wales, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, and in the country as opposed to in a town?
Yeah, in the hinterland, like on a little mountainside suburb. It's only one street, basically. And
If you were living in inner city Melbourne or Sydney, you couldn't have created this music,
no,
could you have?
Definitely not. I think my surroundings definitely played a big part in the sound of the record for sure. Because where we are up there is really dreamy. It's like amazing rainforest, space for days, kind of beauty. So that definitely plays a part in your mental stability or something every day trying to make music. So.
Matt Corby's with us. So given those surroundings, is there ever a danger for you, because other artists have fallen into this trap of trying to recreate that, the beauty of nature or whatever, and it just becomes a little bit indulgent, and it doesn't feel, to use an analogy, it doesn't feel rooted in anything. It's kind of just too wafty, and it's a little bit hippie-ish without actually communicating anything. Yeah. Are you ever in a danger of going too far down a path?
Always. I think, and I'm fine to do that. I'm happy to sort of not waste my time, but just have a crack at a whole bunch of different stuff, musically speaking. And there are a lot of instrumentals and things that have been made at home that are so weird and stupid.
But they're weird and stupid.
That's true. After a couple of weeks, you listen back to them like, what the hell was I thinking?
Yeah, and they stay there.
Yeah, they do.
You can play it to your child now.
Hard drive hits.
Yeah, you got a son, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's a son. What's his name?
Hugh.
Okay. Yeah. How old is he now?
He's 9 months now.
Okay, 9 months. So he's almost getting to the point where he can critique the album.
Yeah. He's close. He's saying dad, which is good. So maybe he's saying bad. Every time I put a song now, bad.
Bad. Yeah, put something on faster.
Put twinkle, little star on.
Listen, we'll talk more about the making of this record. Let's get to some of the music. We've got a couple of tracks lined up that we're playing for the first time. Matt Corby's new album is called Rainbow Valley. Let's get to this track. It's called Get With The Times. New music from Matt Corby. Get With The Times there from the Matt Corby record, which we're basically showcasing tonight on 2018, and Matt is with us. So that's a great track. Tell me, with all the instruments, you and Dan in the studio doing most of it, or you basically doing all the instruments?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So when it comes to like a rhythm section, because the rhythm section in that track is really great, is that a challenge for you to be on the bass and the drums and sync it?
Not really. I think because you're doing it one at a time, we'll play drums to a click, so you know that everything's going to be as on the grid as possible. And I'm really meticulous about rhythms. So is Dan, actually. He used to be a drummer, so he a lot of the time knows what I'm trying to do on the kit, and he has patience with that. But bass is always something that I put on last. And
that's so weird, because most records are started with the bass.
Yeah, no, I can't do it until everything's on, because it can bass. There is a billion different ways to play a bass line on a song, and you really have to be careful about the space that you occupy with it. And without knowing where the melody is, and you can definitely ruin a track by overplaying or underplaying the bass. Yeah.
Because the temptation would be to play a lot of the melodic lines on the bass early on,
yeah,
and then it's just doubling up with what you come up with voice-wise.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay, I didn't think of it that way. So that's the first of a few tracks we'll play off Matt Corby's new album, Rainbow Valley. Talking of genres, this record to me speaks of the late 60s.
Very good.
And there's a couple of artists which I can't get out of my head when I listen to this record. Beach Boys.
Yep.
And Marvin Gaye.
Very good. Yes.
Oh, really?
No,
I haven't read this anywhere. So Beach Boys and Marvin Gaye are two big reference points?
Yeah, big time. I think with another track that we're about to play, as soon as we started writing, we were like, oh, this is the Marvin song. We could push this into Marvin territory. Obviously, all due respect, I'm never going to be as good as Marvin, but he was a big reference. And we were actually listening to, me and Dan, when we drive to the studio every day, we had Marvin Gaye's greatest hits on. That probably seeped into our subconscious as we were writing tunes to the record. But yeah.
And I guess if you want a real strong reference point, the What's Going On record, which is obviously a hugely inspirational record to a lot of different artists.
Yeah.
But that body of work is still so remarkable, isn't it?
It's crazy. And the grooves are crazy. And I don't know, it's a pretty amazing era of music right there.
You're playing most of the instruments on this record. What about the voices? Most of these,
all me.
It's all you.
Yeah.
And this is the Beach Boys stuff.
Yeah.
This is where all those wonderful, vocal harmonies that they were hearing in their head came out through those microphones back then.
That's probably my strongest point in a studio, is being able to be full sort of gospel choir harmony section. Dan laughs his head off when I do it, because it comes together quite quickly. I've obviously been a singer since I was 5 or 6 years old, and I've been recording music for, 12 years or something. And it comes so naturally to me to do, multi sort of counter melodic harmonies and just filling out a space with vocals.
Do you hear it in your head first?
Yeah, I do to a degree, but then I'll do a lot of playing around with seeing how far I can push the harmonies, and I don't even really need to preempt just because, here's the third, here's the fifth, let's put like a seventh in, or let's, it's quite a natural thing.
It's instinct.
Yeah.
Any notes you can't hit?
Oh, well, I mean, probably Mariah Carey territory.
Yeah, no, I know. But ones that are in your head and you just go, I can't quite get that note I'm hearing.
That does happen, but I'll just sit there for 20 minutes until I nail it, because I don't like being defeated by musical ideas.
Yeah, that's remarkable, because I was listening to these voices and some of them just did not sound like you.
Yeah, no, we did that intentionally as well, because I'd stand in different parts of the room and then I'd change my timbre and I'd either go a bit whiny and nasally, or I'd be all nice and rounded tones. So when you put it all together and just, put it all on a reverb bus, it does really sound like a room full of people.
It does, absolutely. Okay, Matt Corby, let's get to another piece of music. Before we actually hear one of the tracks that we've been playing leading up to the release of this record, it's a track called All That I See. Let me just play a little bit of this. Now, there's a few instruments that I'm hearing in the mix. Some of them I know what you're playing, but that one, it sounds familiar, but I can't quite put my finger on what it is, because you've also used a little bit as an interlude halfway through the record. So what's that instrument that we're going to hear in All That I See?
That would just be like filtered strings on a mellotron.
Filtered strings on a mellotron.
Yeah. So like the new Stockholm mellotrons are like wizardry. They're one of the best tools anyone could use in a studio. Basically, we almost overloaded the mellotron on this album. It's on every track multiple times.
Right.
And it just, I don't know, it's real sampled, horn sections, string sections and stuff. And it's so much easier to just play a bunch of chords and melodies on that than hire a fucking string section to come in.
You know what? You fooled me, because later in the record especially, I'm going, wow, I wonder where he got the string section. And he can't play strings, I'm pretty sure. But there you go. The mellotron came to the rescue.
It did, yeah.
All right, well, let's hear the track in full. All That I See, new music from Matt Corby. On Triple J on 2018, we're listening to Matt Corby's record. It's coming out at the end of this week. You're hearing some of it for the very first time, and Matt is still with us. All That I See, one of the tracks you've been hearing on Triple J. A few more facts about the record. Rainbow Valley. It's a very Byron Bay type title. Is there actually a place on the north coast of New South Wales called Rainbow Valley?
Well, our property is actually called Rainbow Valley. So the guy that owned it before us, he was a full-time gardener and a bit of a legend, and that was what he named it. And there's a sign out the front that was especially made. I think he would have either commissioned someone to do it or made it himself.
How big's the sign?
It's big. It's as big as I am, basically. It's on like a big swinging gate out the front. And
do people think it's a tourist destination at all
no,
when they drive by?
It's so far off the beaten track, I don't think anyone would see it. So that's also a good thing. I should probably take it off if it was too
People are going to be driving around trying to find this Rainbow Valley. Is it? Did it speak to you when you actually moved into the property yourself? You went, this feels good, I'm going to leave it there?
Yeah, well, obviously, it's because it's on the gates, the first thing you notice, and it sets up the property super well. You come in and you're just like, I can see how this is a Rainbow Valley for sure. Very fitting.
What's the theme of this record? Is it a positive record?
It is positive. It's like very introspective, simple truths lyrically.
What do you mean by simple truths?
As in, I think I had in mind when I was writing this record lyrically, I wanted it to be somewhat of a simple instructional thing for Hugh.
About how to live his life?
Kind of, and just the way that I see the world and stuff. And I guess it's still a little bit cryptic to a degree, but some of the lyrics are fairly literal. And I tried not to judge myself as much, because I tend to get really hypercritical and work myself into a little thinking hole and try and be a little bit too clever sometimes, which turns out worse than if I was actually just freely stating something that I feel is true. Because a lot of the time, if I come up with something too quick, I won't value it. I'll be like, oh, no, that's just stupid, because that's my first thought and I should really elaborate this. I should elaborate in my head or
dig a little deeper maybe.
Yeah. So I
Do you get to know yourself a little bit better through this process?
I think you turn out more confused because you're just like, who am I?
Scratching the layers, and then all of a sudden this onion looks very dark underneath. I didn't see this purple patch.
Yeah.
Oh my God, what is this?
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a little bit of therapy, but it's also a little bit of a confusing process too. Do you think Hugh will value it in years to come?
Oh, who knows? He might be just into like drum and bass or something. He might wake up one day and be like, "Your music's shit, Dad." Like, yeah, all right.
Be prepared for it.
Yeah.
You won't be the first father to go down that path.
Not a question of if, it's when.
How confident are you with this record too?
I don't know. It's a hard thing to answer because there's a part of me that I actually am quite proud of it, which I don't say lightly, and I would never normally admit publicly, but I have in listening to this back over the last couple of months and working on the mixes and stuff. There have been so many moments where I've just sort of stopped and been like, "Oh, this works." Like I'm really glad that I don't feel annoyed at myself when I'm listening to this music, because that happens a lot with me. I think it happens with a lot of artists. They have to be their own worst critic.
I was just thinking about No Ordinary Life, which when we got it, it was pretty much everyone in a room listening to it and just going, wow.
Oh, that's cool.
And then hearing it on the radio, seeing the reaction back, as you just said, it works.
Yeah.
And you know what? I was thinking, I hope it's not the fluke moment off the record sort of thing. I hope all the records kind of like this Pandora's box, because, you talked about the Willy Wonka, that sort of fantasy film-like type idea behind No Ordinary Life. And it's not all like that over the rest of the record. But as I said before, there is this sort of dreamlike state.
Yeah.
Over the record, which I find really inspiring, really exciting, and really different from a lot of other records around.
That's awesome.
I think it's a remarkable record. I think you should feel good. It's early days.
Yeah,
Look, the record hasn't even come out.
I know.
We could be killing it. Let's just say, go out and make your own minds up. Don't listen to me. It's not that good, Kingsmill. What are you talking about? All right, the album is called Rainbow Valley. It's out at the end of the week from Matt Corby. This track, New Day Coming. Talk this one through for us.
This song was tough because I think it was originally 3 different songs. What was originally the verse became the chorus, and then there was a bridge that was a verse, and then we completely scrapped it. And even when we were mixing, we got to a point where I was like, we need to write another chorus to this. And Dan was just like, no,
another chorus.
What are you doing? And I wrote a bunch of lyrics like that day, and we just went and threw it all down on a mic. And that is actually the chorus of the song now was from the mixing process, which is really funny. Like it did not sound like that as we were starting the mixing that day.
Yeah.
And
it sounds like a very confusing jigsaw puzzle.
It was.
This one.
It really was. But I think we kind of got it right in the end.
It's funny. You can't see the sticky tape.
No. It would be so funny showing people the progression of that song and one of the other track's elements, because it had so many different forms, and you wouldn't even recognize the early form to this finished product now.
Yeah. And what about lyrically with New Day Coming? Anything in particular that was in your head?
This is more just about kind of being yourself and being okay with that. And there is one lyric in it that is just like, I've decided I can be myself, which is something that a lot of people have to consciously decide a lot of the time. We live in a weird sort of socially anxious culture. There's multiple facets to our socialization too. There's our 2-dimensional online life, and then there's our everyday banter with the people that live around us, and then our friends, and then I don't know. That sounds very obvious, but it can create a lot of anxiety
and questions
and self-doubt. And this song in particular is like, the world is going to continue on being what it is, and if you can either choose to be completely destroyed by it or be okay to not really not give a fuck, but at least know where you are in context with the rest of it, if that makes sense. I mean, that's, again, really obvious. People are probably like, that's stupid, but, sometimes the simplest things, when they're realized, can be quite powerful.
Yeah, beautiful. Once again on Triple J, new music from Matt Corby there. That one, New Day Coming, is going to be on his second album. It's called Rainbow Valley. We've had Matt in on Triple J this evening talking about the making of it. The Matt Corby record is going to be released at the end of this week on Friday. So he played a couple of tracks for the very first time and shared it with you. And Matt, talking to me about the making of this record on the north coast of New South Wales. Thanks to everyone who's been texting in, loving the sound of this new music from Matt Corby. Meg in Sydney said, I haven't looked forward to a new album so much in ages. Also, someone said, I absolutely adore No Ordinary Life. It makes me joyous every time I hear it. I can share that feeling. Tash from Melbourne said, oh my gosh, how is Matt so dreamy? Jules in Newcastle took humour in the fact that I said rooted during the interview. Thanks, Jules. And Trev from Cronulla in Sydney also said, the Matt Corby, I'm listening intently and I'm eating these. And Trev shared a picture of gobstoppers with me that he was eating whilst listening to the Matt Corby interview. The album, guess what I'm going to say next? The album is going to be featured on Triple J starting tomorrow. So if your appetite was whetted by those couple of tracks, don't worry. Before the album is officially launched on Friday, you'll get to hear lots of it on Triple J starting tomorrow morning. Matt's going to be touring this record pretty much next year. He's going to kick off with some European and UK dates early next year, and then he should be sort of getting into Australian mode sometime a couple of months after that.